In this video, I'm going to talk about why I switched from a Canon DSLR to the Sony A6000. Hey everybody, welcome to Dan Bullman Photography. If this is your first time watching, please hit that subscribe button down below to get more awesome content about photography. Now let's get to it. Now when I just started learning photography, like many people, I picked up a Canon DSLR. The camera I was shooting with is fairly old. It was a Canon 40D, but it was a really great camera to learn on and get the basics of photography down. But after shooting with this camera for about a year, I started looking for something a little bit better. I wanted to step up the quality and give something that had a little bit more control. But I realized something: I didn't necessarily want to get another DSLR. DSLRs are big and bulky, and I wanted to look for something that had the same feature set and abilities as one of the newer Canon DSLRs or Nikon DSLRs, but was in a more compact form factor. So I started looking to mirrorless cameras, and particularly the Sony A6000. Now the form factor, image quality, and price point were all super appealing about the Sony A6000, and ultimately I decided to purchase this camera over the other ones I was considering. Here's why I decided to make the switch. Now first and foremost is the fantastic image quality. The Sony A6000 has a 24 megapixel sensor and has really good RAW files that you can manipulate well in editing software like Adobe Lightroom or Capture One. Now I particularly prefer editing the RAW files in Capture One because I feel I can get a little bit more out of them. And with Sony cameras, Capture One has a version that's free if you use Sony cameras like the A6000. Another reason I picked the Sony A6000 over something like a Canon or Nikon DSLR is something that I've already alluded to, and that's its size and portability. Now for me personally, I didn't really like taking my Canon DSLR with me because it was just big and bulky, and I didn't want to throw it in my backpack if I was going to work or something. But more often than not, I do take my Sony A6000 with me, and that's because it's easy to just toss it into my backpack. I don't really notice it, and so if an opportunity comes up to take a photo when I'm out and about on my daily routine, I have the A6000 with me, and I have a better chance of capturing those moments. Now there are other mirrorless cameras out there besides the Sony A6000. Fujifilm, Pansonic, and Olympus all make good mirrorless cameras, but for me there were a couple features of the Sony A6000 that stuck out when I compared them to the other brand that I was seriously considering, which is Fujifilm. Now the first big one for me when comparing it to Fujifilm was the faster autofocus. The Sony A6000 has super fast autofocus. I tested it against a couple of Fujifilm cameras that were in a similar price point whenever I was looking to buy a couple years ago, and the Fujifilm cameras were sluggish. I think I used the XE1 or XE2, I can't remember, but the A6000 just performed a lot better, and it performed a lot better than my older Canon camera, which isn't surprising. But the A6000 just has really good autofocus, and particularly if you shoot portraits, it has a really good ability to grab on and lock onto a face, which was something that's been really useful for me, and it just is a really great camera in that regard. One of the other reasons I chose the Sony A6000 is that there are a number of good lens options available for it. Now, the Fujifilm X series does have better lenses in my opinion and a more variety, but one of the things that I noticed is that their lenses are significantly pricier than Sony lenses. Now, I did a video on the best budget lenses for the Sony A6000. I'll link it up right here if you're interested in seeing that. But one of the things that I've really loved about the A6000 is that there are good lenses available for the type of stuff that I want to shoot, which is mostly portraits and cityscapes. Another advantage of the Sony A6000 is that you're able to adapt old vintage lenses to the camera and lenses from other systems. So the range of options available for a Sony A6000 is pretty wide, especially if you're considering something like vintage lenses and you're not afraid to manually focus. The last reason that I chose the Sony A6000 over some of the other cameras that I was looking at is because of the fantastic video quality. Now, when I was buying this camera, I wasn't super big into video, but I did want something that could give me a really good video image quality in a compact package, and the Sony A6000 fit the bill. Now, recording audio is a little bit of a challenge with the A6000. A lot of people have pointed this out because it doesn't have an internal mic jack. So my solution to that has been to use the Sony UWP D11 wireless kit, which syncs via a hot shoe mount to the camera so I can record audio internally. Another option is to use an external audio recorder like an H1 and sync the audio up in post which is easy with programs like DaVinci Resolve and other editing softwares. And I do think there are some better options out there if you primarily want to shoot video. For instance, Panasonic has some cameras that are probably better suited towards shooting video than the Sony A6000. But when it comes down to it, I'm able to get what I want out of the Sony A6000, and that was a big deciding factor for me. So those are the reasons why I chose the Sony A6000 and why I switched from Canon to the Sony A6000. So what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Have you guys switched from Canon to Sony? Are you considering making the switch? And what other options would you consider when making a decision? We'll see you soon, folks. This has been another episode of Dan Bullman Photography. Peace.